back, friends. This is Yvonne Davis, your traveling warrior astrologer and author of The Power of Manifestation, Creating a Life You Love, and In the Magic Flow, a journey of personal transformation. Today I am talking about the Pluto direct, and this is going to happen about 7 hours after the new moon on October 6th. And I just felt like the energy was going to shift in such a dramatic way that it was really important to do a separate video on this. So again, Pluto stations direct about 7 hours after the new moon on October 6th. And so we're going to talk about what that means, particularly the Pluto energy. Okay, so Pluto is probably one of the most intense planetary energies. It really is about intensity, and it's about depth. So with this rulership, you want to be thinking about the depths of your own being, your own shadow. Think about going into the depths of your own shadow. Your unconscious, your subconscious, the places where things may be repressed or unseen, and you need to go down there and do some excavation. And when Pluto shifts directions, often there will be an event that corresponds to that really sort of gives you some important information, gives you a clue about those Pluto issues. And so as an example, we are already dealing with the Mercury retrograde in Libra and a stellium in Libra, including the new moon in Mars. And so we can make a pretty good guess that whatever is coming up is going to be related to how we relate to other people, how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to reality, and how we give our power away. And the reason I know that is because Pluto is all about power, okay? So when you're thinking about these planetary energies and what's happening right now, look at your life and see what the issues are around relationship, and particularly see how perhaps you give your power away in relationships. So as an example, maybe you have some fear of doing things on your own or meeting new people, or maybe you actually don't have a problem with meeting new people, but maybe you have a problem with intimacy, like in the long run, because the perfect balance of secure relationships, or what's called secure attachment in psychology, is to be comfortable in your own skin, so you're okay being alone. You don't need other people around all the time, or to go new places and do new things. You don't need to be with other people all the time. But also you're comfortable meeting new people. You know, you're not afraid of rejection or anything like that. You just trust that people like connection, and so you can be friendly and meet new people. But then also thinking about your long-term relationships and how comfortable you are with things like intimacy and honesty and authenticity and commitment. And so that's the whole range of relationships with people and situations. And so you could be looking at those things and see, are there ways that you give your power away? How might you find ways to empower yourself? And once you see those things, then you can begin to take some action. Maybe there are some relationships that you need to leave. And usually what I've found is that we will go through cycles of meeting more people, forming relationships, and then we'll go through phases of releasing people and shedding relationships. And on one hand I could say, well, I don't know why that happens, but then on the other hand I would say, well, because everything is cyclical, even astrology. And so certain energetic patterns are activated at certain times in our lives. That's why we may go through periods where we tend to release more relationships than in other times. And so I think in particular, Leo has been activated because of the fact that Saturn is in Aquarius. So if you have a Leo sun or a Leo ascendant, or perhaps even a progressed Leo sun or Leo ascendant, or even a Leo moon, I think any people in those categories may be going through a phase of releasing relationships that no longer serve you, that no longer meet needs, for whatever reason. Perhaps there have been some boundary violations, and that's usually the issue that's going to come up when we're talking about relationships and power dynamics, which is definitely what we're talking about right now. And so if you notice any relationships where you've had boundary issues and you've tried to establish boundaries, and for whatever reason this particular person cannot seem to boundaries, you may have to consider either ending that relationship or creating some separation there, some distance there, so that you can begin to establish stronger boundaries and attract people who respect your boundaries. So these are the issues that come up with all of the planetary energy right now, all of the planets that are in Libra, particularly the new moon, which is obviously the sun and the moon conjunct, and Mars and Mercury retrograde. And the fact that Mercury is going retrograde means also that we go into the inner depths and we look into the past and we see what kind of patterns have been established in the past and ask ourselves, are they still healthy? And then with Pluto changing directions, again, you may actually see something happen on the very day that Pluto stations direct. But usually the way I think about it is like, the tapestry of your life. What's the normal routine, the things that you do, the way you interact with people, the things that happen, and then you notice something that really seems to stand out, that's different for whatever reason, either energetically or you just notice it in a way you never noticed it before. And then okay, that's it. That's my Pluto issue. That's my Mercury retrograde issue that I need to pay more attention to, because something is disempowering me here and I need to make a change. And so Pluto changing directions is definitely about excavating the depths of your soul and your psyche and going into the shadow, into the subconscious, and really pulling that material up into the conscious mind for processing in a way that can help you to become more empowered. So I want to talk really quickly about the archetypes related to Pluto. Again, Pluto is known as the god of the underworld, and in ancient times, because of the fact that they didn't have like the printing press, they used the archetypes as a way of communicating. So whenever someone could write a story, like for example, Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus goes into the underworld at one point. I mean, he has many, many travels. And the thing about it is that in those times, people understood you don't just read what's on the surface. It's like hyperlink, like that's the way we talk today. If you write to somebody, you might send a hyperlink, and then if someone clicks on that hyperlink, it opens up all this other information. That's the way the archetypes worked back then, was that people understood the archetypes and they understood that the language was very symbolic. So if you saw something or something was mentioned, then you understood there was a whole depth of other story and meaning related to that. That's the way archetypes work. And they also tap in, because they're very symbolic, they tap into our sixth chakra, which is the chakra of archetypal consciousness and intuition, so that you could make connections that were not necessarily verbalized, okay, but you understood the meaning, and there's a feeling that came with it. That's, if you really want to understand astrology, understanding the archetypes really helps with that. So the archetype of Pluto, again, is the god of the underworld. And so the idea was that if you were like on a hero's journey, you would go into the underworld and encounter what was there, which might be, your demons, or you go through an initiation and you have to pull up and work with the demons or the guardians of the threshold, and you have to integrate the power that they held, because that was actually your power. Once you integrated that, then you could come out of the underworld and you were so much more empowered after that experience. So that's the archetypal meaning. And if you may know of these archetypes by other names, like, for example, Hades, or even Pan sometimes can be associated with that dark, shadowy underworld, very, very much connected to the earth. It's very earthy, even though you're going into your psyche. But I think it's earthy because the woundedness that we experience when we're younger is actually implanted in our central nervous system in a way that is not connected to a conscious memory. So you can get triggered by things and have no idea why. And I mentioned some of that in my new moon video, like, for example, and I mentioned also that sometimes people can be in their 80s or almost 90 and still not understand how they're acting out of those patterns. So as an example, I know someone who's almost 90 years old who, when he was a child, his family was extremely poor, and he worked really hard to save money for a bicycle, and his mother actually stole the money to buy shoes for the children. And on one hand, you can understand her desperation, but he was so wounded by that even now, at almost 90 years old, he's still, I've watched this person for so many years destroy relationships, and virtually every single time it comes down to something to do with money. And it's just sad, that after almost 9 decades on this planet, that this person is still suffering for something that happened when he was probably 8 or 9 years old. And so you got to look, and you got to see if that's what's happening. And some people are capable. Some people have this intuitive ability to make those connections and to say, oh yeah, I remember now this thing happened to me when I was such and such years old, and now I see how I'm playing that pattern out decades later. Other times you can't actually pull up a memory. Why does this keep happening? And one of the things that I've worked with in my own life that I can't necessarily tie to any particular memory is just a fear of going into the unknown by myself, and always waiting, like, oh, can we go together? Can I make plans with this friend or family member? And can't make it happen, so I never go. And I have been looking at that lately, thinking, that's incredibly limiting and disempowering for me to think that I always have to have a companion to go someplace new that I've never been before. So I'm working on breaking through that myself. So that kind of gives you an idea of the kind of things that you can look at and pull up from the depths of your being, the depths of your psyche and in your shadow, and work with that material in order to empower yourself. So there's a lot to do here with this energy of Pluto stationing direct, Mercury retrograde, and the new moon. So if you're watching this Pluto direct video now and you haven't seen the other two, or you want to go and refresh, I highly recommend it. All three of them are intimately tied together, and they're working together to bring up this material for you to work with to empower yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this to a close now, and thank you all for your comments and for liking the video, sharing the video, and if you have not subscribed, please do subscribe, and